Welcome everybody. We're here in a new episode of the Handball Show. I'm your host Martin Vilelo, and we're joined today by Aaron Wolfblum from California. Just recently returned from an experience in Sweden. How are you doing?
Yep. I'm doing quite well. I just got over jet lag, as you said. I'm sure we'll talk about it later in today's episode. But yeah, I was in Sweden for the last 5 months
All right. So
training handball. Yeah.
perfect. Now let's go back a little bit and tell us how you got involved with handball and how was that experience at the beginning.
Yeah. So I actually have you to thank for getting me involved with handball at my middle school. So I think I was 12 years old. I was playing some other sports, some basketball and baseball, and I saw a flyer for team handball, what we call it in the US, and I didn't really know what it was. I looked it up. I saw it was an Olympic sport, and I thought I'd try it out, and I kind of haven't looked back ever since. So I joined the school team before COVID, played for a couple years, and then after COVID, I started joining the San Francisco Cal Heat adult team at their trainings. And that was a really cool opportunity because it's majority of like Europeans that are coming to San Francisco for work, many like living in the Bay Area, that probably played handball in Germany and France and Spain growing up as kids. They've kind of brought it over and they want to keep playing. So I kind of learned how to play handball from them. A few guys took me under their wing. And while that was all happening, I was still playing for the school team at the next level in our high school. And then I was selected to play for Team USA. So that was a great opportunity. I joined Team USA at a couple international tournaments and through Cal Heat as well. We organized a few summer handball tournaments in Scandinavia. So, and all over Europe. So I had opportunities to travel the world for handball.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's kind of my story.
Nice. So let's go back a little bit to those middle school and high school years. When you started playing, did you find yourself able to adapt to the sport? What other sports did you were you playing before that you were able to translate those skills into the sport?
Yeah, good question. So I primarily played basketball and baseball. I think baseball definitely helped because of throwing and having a strong arm, but basketball was definitely more helpful in like being able to switch over to handball, just fast pace. You have to be athletic, be able to jump. There's some physicality. Of course, handball is much more physical. Um, I think that was actually something that drew me to handball is that it's so much more physical. And it's something that I think people have mentioned before, but it's interesting that Americans aren't immediately drawn to the sport of handball because of how physical it is. I mean, we love American football, and yet, yeah, everyone just seems to overlook handball, at least for the time being. Yeah, I played a mixture of basketball and baseball, and that really I think laid a good foundation for me to switch over to handball.
Hmm.
And from there, it was just a matter of learning all the rules and beginning to develop technique for the sport.
Hmm.
So that definitely took some time. Took a couple years to get a hold of things, but yeah.
Okay, and you were successful the first couple of years, right? You won a championship with your middle school team, but then when you went to high school, it took a couple of years to get there as well. So how was that challenge of playing against other kids of roughly your same age, but maybe more athletic or more used to the sport?
Yeah, well, I would say when you started the teams in our Bay Area Youth League, um, a couple years ahead of me, that was kind of the first generation of American handball players or Californian handball players. So I was for several years kind of playing up with some of the older kids. Um, I liked that challenge. It was fun. But once it got to the high school level and we weren't nearly as successful, I think that was because it's a new sport. People are still learning to kind of play together. So our team didn't have as much chemistry, I would say, and that's very important in every sport, especially handball. You can't just have one player doing everything.
Hmm.
And it took a few years to kind of figure that out and have more of a fluid offense. So I think everyone kind of just developed together and got to a higher level of handball so that we were able to, perform better on the court.
All right. So you had 3 years of handball in middle school, minus the pandemic year there, and
Yeah.
then four in high school. So you're almost when you, at this point you almost have 7 years of experience playing handball here in America, and you're
Yeah.
barely 18 years old, right?
Hmm.
So that's a lot of experience for somebody so young here in the U.S. Do you attribute that mostly to being able to participate here in our league, or there were other influences that get you to the level that you're in right now?
Okay, that's a good question. I would say I one of the reasons I've continued pursuing handball is just because of how much I enjoy playing the sport. The physicality, the athleticism it requires. It's a fun sport.
Mhm.
What can I say? So I think after the first few years, I realized that I want to stick with the sport as long as possible. Now, of course, playing for the national team, I have other aspirations to continue developing and improving. Um,
Okay.
to keep, yeah, joining the team at international tournaments. Um,
Okay. So
so
that motivation of being part of the national team helped you to keep going, right?
absolutely.
So how was that experience? Your first selection, your first tryout, making the team. How was that for you?
It was definitely a nerve-wracking experience. Um, as one of the only United States born and raised players on the team. It was a little bit scary. I can be honest, because many of my teammates had been playing since they were 7 or 8 years old, some even earlier. And not only that, but their training regimen is much higher in Europe, where they're able to train with high level clubs 4 or 5 times a week, sometimes even more. Whereas in the US, we're definitely limited in resources and how often we can train. So I would say it's taken a little while to try to close the gap between me and some of my teammates. Um, yeah, but
Okay.
I kind of got used to it and I got more confidence in my own playing ability and kind of realized like, yeah, I belong in this court too.
All right.
So that's where I am now.
So how was that first tournament in Mexico with a brand new team, all players that never played together, all shelling together and representing the U.S.? How was that experience for you?
That was super cool. Just being able to talk with all of my teammates. Everyone has some cool experiences and kind of coming from all over the world. So that was super cool. That playing for Team USA brought us all together. I would say it was definitely an enjoyable experience getting to see such a high level of handball, something that I wasn't used to and I don't think, seen in person before at any time in my life before then.
Hmm.
So I definitely enjoyed it and tried to make the most of it. Yeah.
Okay. And what remind me, was that before you ever went to Europe to play, or it was after that that we went to Partille the first time?
I believe that was before
Before.
I had been to any European tournaments. So at that point, I had been playing with the Calheat adult team at
Hmm.
some of the US tournaments that we have.
Hmm.
Um, but that I would say the competition was higher in Mexico City.
Okay. And that was the first time that you played with glue, or you have been playing with glue before?
That was the first official time that I played with glue.
Okay.
So that was a fun learning experience as well.
All right. But you didn't have much time on the court. You were like probably the youngest player on the entire roster at the
Yeah.
time, right? But now you had the chance to go back to represent the U.S. at the youth level, and now you have a different role in the team, right? Tell us a little bit how was that experience in Puerto Rico and Kosovo so far.
Well, Puerto Rico was also a great experience. Yeah, being one of the veterans on the team, now I kind of understand more the importance of teamwork and chemistry. And while we have a bunch of guys that haven't played together before, naturally it's going to take some time and some practice to get used to one another and figure things out.
Hmm.
So the real challenge is just speeding up that process. How can we, off the court, kind of all become a team and have some better yeah, teamwork. Sorry about that.
Hmm.
Um, so it really is just like how can we all bond together a little bit on and off the court, and then hopefully the results will follow. So I had more of a role on just got a lot more playing time as one of the older players, and also more of like a leader on the team, trying to keep everyone calm when we were playing in like extreme heat in Puerto Rico, and among other things. So. I would say, and then in Kosovo, so we won the tournament in Puerto Rico to qualify for the IHF Intercontinental phase of the trophy, and I had the opportunity to be team captain at the following tournament. So that was also a cool opportunity. Again, just trying to keep everyone together and help us move forward as a team.
Right. And since you started, I remember in middle school, you started playing on the wing. Then you transition to the right back. Then
Yeah.
you play on the left back on the national team. You play some pivot as well. Playing center back for Calhid. How is that experience over the years of trying almost all the positions in the court?
Well, I would say I think I found the right position for me. I wasn't as strong on the wing, but it is a good. I think more players should start out kind of in the 9 meter positions, just so they can kind of learn more passing and defense, defensive part of the game before moving to wing. But we don't really have that luxury in the US, I would say. Um, but it's been cool getting to try all the different positions out. Each, I don't really know what else to say about
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. So do you think it rounded your game better, having been played or have experience playing all the positions, or it didn't?
I don't think it had too much of an impact,
Okay.
if I'm
Okay.
being completely honest.
All right. All right. So now tell us a little bit about your experience playing for Calhit. Which tournaments did you go to, and then like how was that experience of going abroad representing Calhit and the U.S. In Partille, in Gothenburg, and then in the other countries that we participated in.
Yeah. So I first started training with the San Francisco Cal Heat team, and going to just local. Well, they're not local because we still have to fly a couple hours to these tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
But going to tournaments within the United States, I was able to actually go to one tournament in Canada, but mostly within the United States. And then they had a summer team for youth players, where we trained and prepared to play with glue at Partille Coupe. And we've gone to a few other tournaments, one in Italy, one in Spain. I think this year the second tournament will be in Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those were also very cool experiences because now I finally got a chance to kind of compete against people my own age and see the skill level and the gap and kind of how I've been able to close that skill gap over the last few years. I think that's been very rewarding.
Okay, and what do you think helped you to close that gap, like you say? What things that you did or experience that you had that helped you to close it?
Yeah. So from a from an athletic standpoint, I think no one doubts that American athletes can compete with the best athletes around the world. We do in so many other sports. Um, it's just a matter of the actual handball technique. And I guess when you're playing in matches, it's just a matter of game experience. That's something that all American players lack because we can't practice nearly as much. We can't have playing matches nearly as much. So you roll with the punches, and um, I've just tried to every practice I can go to, every opportunity, every tournament I can play in, just try to take advantage of it and get as much experience as possible.
Okay, so having that game experience is actually what helped you. You can learn the technique, like you mentioned, from different people, different influences, but having that game experience is what helped you get to the level or at least close that gap that you were mentioning, right?
Yes, yeah, the game experience is very important. When you haven't been able to play very many games, yeah, you can do as much as you want on your own or at practice, but it won't translate to on the court.
Okay. And this international experience with Calhid, like for example, going to Partille actually allow you to make connections, make friends all over the world, and it actually opened the doors for you to, like we see on your jersey there, to participate and be part of the club in Gothenburg, the local club Sävehof. So, tell us a little bit about that experience. How did you pursue it? How it happened, and then how it went for you.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we've been talking for several years about this, but for an up and coming like American player to be able to have the opportunity to train overseas with a European club for development, and I think a few American players have done this when they were older, maybe in their university years, or a few of the national team players have like gone over to try and play professionally in some countries in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but it had never been done at the youth level because for many years we didn't have a good enough youth program in the US. So I think I was kind of like one of the first players to come out of the Bay Area youth handball program that really wanted to pursue handball at a higher level and was willing to sacrifice a bit and kind of stay committed to the sport and try to pursue playing overseas. So after talking with several of the coaches and like managers of the club in Sweden after the Partille Cup, we um, yeah we met with them and discussed like opportunities for me to go over and train with them.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly over the course of a few months and many emails back and forth, we figured out the details that I would graduate early from my high school in the US to go over and do like a handball exchange program,
Mm-hmm.
staying in Sweden. So it was a super cool experience. I mean, I could talk for hours and hours about everything that I did, but I can summarize it a little bit. Um, it was very difficult to get adjusted at first, not only to playing with glue, um, and Swedes use a lot of glue, um, if you don't already know that, but also the training regimen. I was training 7 times a week, um, so several days I was training both mornings and evenings, and there's also like an expectation that you work out on the weekends and in your free time. So 7 handball trainings, I was hitting the gym at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and matches on top of that. So it was very exhausting. I could say I was sleeping really well for almost the entire trip. Um, but I definitely um, improved a lot as a player, um, both like technical skills and also my game awareness. Having being calm on the court, making the right decisions, um, all of that, and just my understanding of the game, like being able to call plays and kind of, I guess, hopefully it will help me in my coaching career as well if I do decide to pursue that.
Okay. And coming from the US, right? Making that change, getting into a new club, new culture. How was that
Mhm.
transition? How long it took for you to get comfortable at practices? How long it took you to actually play a game with the team? How was that?
Yeah. So it definitely took a long time to get fully adjusted. I was very fortunate to be staying with a host family. Um, so that helped smooth the transition over. But in terms of like getting along with my teammates and starting to understand what was happening at practice, because it was all in Swedish. So it did take some time for me to understand all of the handball terminology
Mm-hmm.
to be able to play with the team. Because even though someone can translate everything to English, when you're going full speed on the court, you don't have time for that. So you have to be able to understand the Swedish. And that took a while for me, um, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that was the biggest kind of roadblock, especially to playing matches too, because the coach has to trust that, if he's yelling at you, telling you something from the side of the court, that you'll be able to understand. Um, and a lot can get lost in translation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the biggest roadblock. It did take a couple months for me to begin playing games. But yeah,
Okay.
um,
And how was that experience of playing your first games with a new team in a new environment in Europe?
no, it was cool. Honestly, I really enjoyed it. I think um, I was properly prepared for it as well. So I was just excited to be able to get on the court and kind of, yeah, I mean, it's a much higher level of handball than anywhere in the US and in many other countries. So
Okay.
um, it was very cool getting to play against people around my age. And yeah, it was, I mean, it's cool to also take a step back, maybe in a timeout or after the game and say, yeah, I was competing at that high of a level. That
Hmm.
I was on the court with all of those players.
Okay. And how much playtime did you get at the beginning and towards the end? Were you able to increase that, or you were like playing a lot of minutes from the get go?
It was kind of all over the place. It depended on the opponent because I also respected I was kind of a guest player with
Hmm.
Sävehof this season, and the team I was playing with was preparing for the Swedish Championship, which is kind of a tournament at the end of the year. So against some opponents, they were really trying to work on the chemistry with the existing team. So I took more of a backseat role. But then there were other matches that I was starting and getting a lot more minutes. So
Right. And which
yeah,
position did you play over there?
I was playing left back.
Left back. Okay.
Yeah.
And did you score a lot? I saw some videos of you actually shooting penalties too. How was that?
I've never been good at penalties, and that's all I'll say. But
Okay.
no, it was a nice opportunity, and yeah, I was scoring several goals in all of the matches. I would say um, I didn't have, I wasn't able to get the game footage for too many of my matches, but I had a handful of goals. Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think was the thing that you improved the most with your experience over there?
Oh, definitely my decision making.
Okay.
When the ball was in my hands before, sometimes I would make errant passes or try to do too much. And now I really understand the pace of the game, the flow of the game, and just trying to draw an extra defender, spacing, positioning, all of that stuff. And with or without the ball in your hands, just like making the right decision of, oh, go over here,
Hmm.
oh, stay further back, don't attack now, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
um, yeah.
And when you see Americans discovering the sport for the first time, like a lot of them think that it's super easy to manage, to start playing, and to be dominant in the Olympics with a few athletes that we can collect. Why do you think? I mean, do you think that's true? And why do you think people think that?
Okay. Um, First of all, I don't think it's true.
Okay.
Um, yeah. While the US is maybe not the same level on the international stage as many other European countries, it's
Hmm.
still a very talented pool of players, especially with dual citizens coming from abroad.
Hmm.
So you should not take anything for granted. I think you definitely have to earn it and work your way up to having a chance to play on the national team.
Hmm.
Um, and just kind of see those as learning experiences like I have. Um, I think people see the sport that's like within the US, it's not very popular.
Hmm.
Some people don't even know what it is, um, or they confuse it with a couple other sports. So they kind of hear that and they have this perception that, oh, it's this undiscovered sport. I can, if I'm dominating within the US or if I have any potential or promise, then I can just, dominate everywhere else. And that is not at all the case. I think uh, we should stay a lot more humble within the international handball community.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
All right. So, well, in which aspect do you think is the difference between the level here in the U.S. compared with what you face over there in Sweden? We, we understand it's a higher level, but which aspects do you think are more prominent to identify what the differences are in the level?
Yeah, definitely the speed at which the game
Mm-hmm.
moves. I think that's the easiest to kind of explain because it means that on defense, the teams are reacting much quicker. They're identifying kind of what you're going to do before maybe even you know what you're going to do. So it's much harder to get flow and momentum on attack when defenses are that much stronger and moving that much quicker and trying to confuse you.
Mm-hmm.
And then on offense, it's a completely different sport. The speed of passing and shifting around and utilizing the pivot um, position, it's much different. Like it's very easy to get lost, and for me at first as well, it was moving very fast. Um, so it's yeah, just the more comfortable you get and the more experience you have, the more it kind of slows down
Okay.
for you, and you can make the right decisions.
And what about the precision of not only passing but of body movement, body positioning, and transitions?
Well, there's much more. There's a higher level of technique that goes into playing with resin on the ball,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to do spin shots, lobs, many different variety of shots. Where it's when you don't play with any resin, you're more limited in your shot selection,
Mm-hmm.
and your pass selection, I would say. Um, if that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. And now, looking ahead, now what are your plans? Now you're back in the U.S. You have the experience in Sweden. What are your plans for the next few years or more if you have them already?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm going to study engineering
Mm-hmm.
at a university in California, UC San Diego. There is a U.S. club team, an adult team in San Diego that I'll be training with
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. And my goal is to start a handball club at the school as well. Hopefully targeting more international students and exchange students to be able to field a higher a better team.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I'm definitely open to the prospect of coaching and kind of maybe transitioning a few players from like basketball over to handball. But it's harder to work with someone that has never played handball in their life. So definitely want to find a team or field a team of experienced players as much as I can get, and then on my own, I'll be training as much individually
Mm-hmm.
to continue staying competitive for the national team.
Okay.
I think it'll be very difficult, especially coming from what I just did in Sweden, training at least once a day.
Mm-hmm.
To all of a sudden, it's going to be very difficult to have access to handball equipment, and I probably won't be able to play with any resin. Um, and you won't be able, yeah, the level of training, even if you are practicing, it won't be nearly as high. You won't be able to do the same exercises
Mm-hmm.
and have the same, like I said, game experience or at least replicating like game situations that doesn't really exist to the same extent in the US. So
Okay.
I'll do as much as I can individually and with the club teams in the area, and I hope that I'll be able to study abroad somewhere in Europe during my time um, studying, so then I can play with the team for half a year or a full year, and then after those 4 years, I'll see what happens from there. But I haven't thought too much about that.
Okay. So you still have the hope of going back to Europe and keep playing over there, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
All right. And so talking a little bit about how from your experience, right? Because you've been like you say playing baseball and basketball, so you know how the American sports system works, and how do you compare now with handball and how handball has been developed in Europe? Now you have that experience of having played in clubs, being part of an organization in Europe where the sport is more developed. What
Mhm.
do you think we need to do here in the US for handball when you having that information, right? How the sport got developed in Europe and how other sports are being ranked here in the US. What do you think will be the right path for us to follow?
Okay, that is a really difficult question to answer.
I know.
I can speak to a few things.
Mm-hmm.
First, starting at like the local level and handball development in the U.S. club teams do exist, but there's a much heavier focus on school teams, which doesn't exist nearly as much in Europe. So in American middle school and high school, we play teams. We represent our school. That's the whole competitive nature of it. There's a lot of school spirit involved,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes all the way up to university, of course. So I think that makes it more difficult to develop handball actually because you have to find a way to integrate it into all of these schools and try to make it like an official sport of the school and in the school league,
Mm-hmm.
which will take lots and lots and lots of time. Um, so I think that's actually a challenge because yeah, in Europe it's only club teams for the most part. So any teams can kind of people are expected to join and play the sport outside of their schools,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just much easier to set up leagues independently. Because also in the U.S. school system, people play many sports during the year. It's many people aren't just playing one sport; they'll play two or three sports,
Mm-hmm.
so they don't have the time during the year to focus on handball if it's not a part of the school sports system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in terms of growing the national awareness and attention for handball.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in the US, because we don't have any sort of relegation or promotion system in any major sports, it also presents a challenge because people are much more attached to individual teams. Um, so yeah, the like if you look at the NFL or the NBA, all the teams are the same every single year and they're all like associated with the cities around the US. So I think it will be very difficult to try to like compete with those sports. They have like a monopoly on viewership around the US.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly that's a whole other issue to discuss. But
Okay.
in growing awareness for handball, yeah.
Okay. So, but which path do you think uh, it will work here? Like, continue trying to pursue to make it a school official sport, or use the model that they have in Europe? Like, for example, here in the U.S., soccer is following with all the clubs, organizations. Which one do you think could be more successful?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think trying to make it a school sport is the best option, at least in the US. And then, because once it's a school sport, I think the clubs will kind of follow, and so will the attention.
Okay.
Um, because yeah, but that is difficult because you have to have enough coaches in the area, and there's a lot of policy or like legislation that might have to go into making it an official sport. Um, so for now, at least having it integrated into schools as clubs,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the next best step, and that's kind of what we have in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
They're not official school sports, but they're associated with the school. I think just trying to expand that across California and then see where it goes from there.
All right. And so, to finish off, what message will you give to young people here in the U.S. that never heard of handball or would like to try handball, or they don't know if they want to try something new or continue playing the sport they've been playing their entire life?
I mean, the easiest thing to say is give it a try. If you're playing basketball, if you're playing baseball, volleyball, soccer, give handball a try. I mean, it deserves some attention. It's a fun sport, and you might fall in love with it just like I did. So that's my advice to anyone. Give it a try. Watch some videos of it, and it's a pretty cool sport.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. I'm sure we're gonna see each other again and maybe
Yep.
have you here. But it was important, at least for me, to have you here in our last episode of the season, since you were part of the first episode when we started. Even though we had some audio technical issues on that first interview, but
Yes.
we've learned, we evolved, and now we're here on our 10th episode, finishing the season. Hopefully, coming back next year with more stuff and more better technically as well. But thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
For
for having me.
yeah, for sharing
Yeah.
your story, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, you heard it here. Stay tuned for season two.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, bye.